So what in the hell happened in the market yesterday? Is this indicative of a larger recession? What happened in the market yesterday, if you weren't paying attention, by the way, and I got a lot of messages from a lot of you yesterday that said, hey, Clayton, did you see what happened in the market? Because earlier in the day, I did a story about how, Wall Street thinks that a recession is over. And a number of different sources reported that. In fact, Axios had a front page story about that. Goldman Sachs, and a number of big hedge fund managers and so forth came out and they're like, yeah, recession is over. Well, what happened yesterday was a 500-point Dow Jones dump. That's what happened yesterday. And the market went into a panic yesterday afternoon. So is this indicative of some larger recession? The answer is no, it's not. And I hold firm on this because what happened yesterday, again, there are a bunch of big things that happened yesterday that I think are more indicative of Wall Street's own self-awareness about itself and its own corruption and its own selfishness. Remember, the market is not connected to you. I know President Trump likes to go out there in the campaign trail or in interviews and say, what are you talking about? When I say that the market is fantastic, what are you talking about? What I'm saying is that everyone's got a 401k, and that's great for all Americans. I don't know if anyone's told him that most Americans, the majority of Americans, lower income, lower middle class Americans do not have 401k plans. They don't own stocks. So when the president wants to get out there and say that, when Wall Street's doing great, that's good for Americans. No, it's good for the wealthy people. It's good for the upper middle class. It's good for the wealthy. And it's good for Wall Street more than anything else. That's what it is. It's not good for you. So yesterday, Wall Street took a dump, lost 500 points. So what happened? Well, a number of things happened yesterday. One of the big things, though, was I think, there's a couple of big things. There was some self-awareness about this bombshell story in BuzzFeed News, going through and finding out all of the corruption that's been tied to Wall Street. I'm just going to read a few little pieces from this amazing story yesterday from BuzzFeed News. I would encourage all of you to go find it. Just go to BuzzFeedNews.com and dig up this story. The story is called the FinCEN Files. The FinCEN Files. Thousands of secret, suspicious activity reports offer a never-before-seen picture of corruption and complicity and how the government lets itself flourish. This was had 8 reporters on this story. 1, 2, 3, 4, 10, no, 10 reporters covering this story. It's a massive story. And I'm just going to read you some highlights here about Wall Street and how corrupt they are and why they took a bit of a dump yesterday on maybe now the governments are going to start paying attention and they got spooked about how corrupt they are and how they keep you poor. I'll read some of this. A huge trove of secret government documents reveals for the first time how the giants of Western banking move trillions of dollars in suspicious transactions, enriching themselves and their shareholders while facilitating the work of terrorists, kleptocrats, and drug kingpins. And the U.S. government, despite its vast powers, fails to stop it. You know why they fail to stop it? Because they look the other way. Trillions of dollars. So these documents, compiled by banks, shared with the government's aware of these documents, but kept from the public view, you're not allowed to see these things, expose the hollowness of banking safeguards, the ease with which criminals have exploited them, profits from deadly drug wars, fortunes embezzled from developing countries, hard-earned savings stolen that are allowed to flow in and out of these financial institutions. The banks look the other way. So the banks, Wall Street, all tied together in this, even though there are plenty of whistleblowers that have come forward and talked about it. Bernie Sanders took to Twitter yesterday about this, not surprisingly. And where is that? Here it is. Here's Bernie Sanders yesterday. Money laundering, bribery, mortgage fraud, collusion, currency manipulation, rate tampering. These are just some of the routine business practices on Wall Street. The business model of Wall Street is fraud. It is not the exception to the rule. It is the rule. Break them up. Bernie Sanders, senator from Vermont, the longest-serving independent senator in American history. Good for him for speaking the truth on this. Because remember, we don't have a two-party system in this country. I mean, we kind of pay lip service to it, that we do. That there's Republicans and Democrats. It's all part of the same system. It's one system. It's one Wall Street run, corporate elite, corrupt system. That's it. And they push people like Bernie Sanders out of the way. I mean, the great lengths 6 months ago, what Bernie Sanders had to endure during the primaries and caucuses, being pushed aside by the DNC, rigging votes, etc. It's the truth.
Come on, man.
Sorry, Joe. Got to speak truth on this show. That's one big piece of why Wall Street took a dump yesterday. Another big piece of it was oil. Oil took a dive. And what you must understand about the market in all of this is that when one big piece of the market moves, it brings the entire market with it. So like on NASDAQ, when Google and Apple, people dump shares of that, or they have a, reported earnings are in decline or something, it moves the entire NASDAQ. That's what happened yesterday. So there's no recession. Wall Street is doing just fine overall. They took a dive in oil. Also on news that the 10-year Treasury bonds, fine. But there were a couple of other big stories. But it's all international. It has nothing to do with you. And Congress isn't going to care. It'll be interesting to see today if the Federal Reserve has any comments about what happened in the market yesterday. Probably not. Because they're happy. They're happy. To them, they're getting exactly what they need. The economy is rebounding. The Federal Reserve is funneling trillions of dollars into their pockets, and you get screwed day in and day out. Another big piece that they're looking at, though, is the pandemic. So maybe they do have a heart. No. Don't get ahead of yourself. We're seeing a resurgence, over 50,000 new coronavirus cases in the United States in one day. Europe is worried about more surges and lockdowns, calling in the army in Spain. London has now said, hey, pubs are closing at night now. Getting these things closed up again because surging coronavirus cases. We're heading into the fall now. This is the big concern. And just look at the latest numbers on this as we look at the death toll today. Again, I'm watching this on Johns Hopkins University numbers. I don't pay attention to the mainstream media because if you look at just this, if you look at this, you see we're 199,000, right near 200,000 deaths. So one of the things dragging the market down is this $200,000 coronavirus deaths. In Europe, cases rising there. UK is on track to have almost 50,000 new cases per day by mid-October. The British government is also putting in a second lockdown consideration right now, a second lockdown. So this is another reason why the stock market panicked. Again, they're not concerned about you. They're concerned about international trade and what this could mean for them, their bottom lines. Not tied to you in any way. China, also a concern. This is what brought the market down yesterday. Beijing released new penalties for its unreliable entities list, which is now targeting foreign individuals and companies whose actions are viewed as, quote, a threat to the Chinese interests. Penalties could include fines or restrictions on work permits, investments, and trade. Clearly, a shot back at the White House in the United States over TikTok. Also politics. Look, we've got 42 days now until just over 42 days until the election, roughly. We've got early voting starting, but investors are prepping for a drawn-out result. And one thing Wall Street can't stand is uncertainty. So if we on election day don't know who the president is, by the way, here, how many people watching right now actually think on election day we'll know who the next president of the United States is? Can you imagine? I can't at this point. With all of the votes and the absentee votes and mail-in ballots that we're going to have to count afterwards, I don't think so. I think it's going to be an election week. We're not going to know who the president will be for a week or even more. We'll see what kind of court battles there are. And so that uncertainty is also causing concern for Wall Street. But again, it has nothing to do with you. We are not in a recession according to Wall Street, but you wouldn't know that because you're suffering. But Wall Street is doing just fine. So those are some of the points moving Wall Street yesterday. Go ahead and smash that like button, by the way. I forgot to mention that. And subscribe to our channel. We do this show 9 a.m. Eastern time every day right here on YouTube. So thank you for being a part of our community. And don't forget to subscribe to our daily newsletter, which we publish every day. And morninginvest.com is the place to go and do that. So thank you so much for subscribing. So those are just some of the points. How many people were really worried and thought, oh, we're out of this recession. Or, you know, we're back into a full recession, stock market yesterday. You know, when I saw people saying that, hey, Clayton, maybe you just didn't see that the stock market went down 500 points yesterday. Yeah, I did. But I don't care. Because it's not tied to reality. It's tied to their own self-interests. It's tied to their own self-perpetuation. And when you read a story like that, you know, this BuzzFeed story that Bernie Sanders is talking about, it is mind-blowing. All of these secret documents and how these big banks just move money back and forth from criminals, and all these governments know about it. I mean, the only way we are going to make a wholesale change in this country is if we throw all of these bums out. Get rid of all of them. Because they're all tied to this. I mean, they're all tied to this system. It's all one big happy family. I mean, look at Obama's cabinet, for crying out loud. It came right out of Wall Street. Look at Trump's cronies that he surrounds himself with. Wall Street. It's all the same. And then they want to quell these other voices like Bernie Sanders and Howie Hawkins and Jill Stein and Joe Jorgensen. I mean, come on, the list is endless. You know why? Because they're coming right after the money. When these candidates go right after the money, that's when you have enormous trouble. Don't touch my money.